think I had really great feedback after the first episode, so I think I'm gonna carry on.
I think that was the only bit of positive feedback on the whole podcast, actually. But no, nice to be back for number 2, and I really enjoyed last week. It was good.
Yeah, it was good. We thought we'd have another go. We had a little bit of feedback. One was to try and improve the audio quality. We'll try that. Do keep us telling us. And also we had a few questions in general. One was Stephanie King. We thought we'd go with that one.
Yeah, and the question was looking at the case we did last week. So for those of you guys that haven't watched it, the first podcast we looked at kind of more minimally invasive, I don't like that term, but dentine preservation preparation. And the question was, how do you irrigate those skinny shapes? What's the protocol? What do you do? So what do we do different?
Well, I think there's a bit of a fear of you can't irrigate, you can't clean. What we'll do is we'll give you the practical things that we do in clinic, things that we can take away. So we irrigate with needles. It's no different. You just choose the right needle. And this is just a simple slide to show you the different aspects. You've got the open-ended, so the top needle is just open-ended and needle, so where the irrigant just comes through. I think that's the most dangerous of the lot because it just can extrude fluid through the apex at pressure. Then you have the side cut needle, and again that's quite safe because it has a little bit of needle of fluid coming off to the side. But the one that we really like is the close-ended side vented.
So easy to say, isn't it?
I'm foreign, so I'm forgiven on
Absolutely, but the key as well is it's a 30 gauge needle. So, we are doing more conservative preparations, then you just need to use a narrow needle. It's not rocket science. You've got to get the geometry of the needle has to fit that of the preparation.
What does a 30 gauge correspond to normally?
You tell me, Luke. I can't do that maths.
So a 30 gauge is between a 30 and a 35 file. So even if you're going small, like we're doing at the moment, and skinnier preps, your needle can advance quite a long way down. But there's in terms of fluid dynamics, it's good, it's safe. But there's modern materials, modern needles now. There's something new up there.
Yeah, newish. The Irriflex, made by probably Dentaire, which also is a true anatomy irrigation needle as well. And it's probably the same thing. So it's a plastic tip. Again, it's 0.3 mils at the end of it. The beauty about it is that it's got a bit more flexibility to it, I would say, really. And it can be moved up and down, and it creates a bit of activation, doesn't it? Because you're moving that fluid. This is kind of our sort of hierarchy, if you like, of activation. So for me, it's about you've got to deliver the irrigant in, and then just create a bit of movement to it. And however you choose to do that, I think becomes a bit of personal preference. Cost. Because, they all require different things. Why don't you take us through a couple of those on screen? Because we have all of these. We spend a lot of money on activation.
As John, I think you put it really well. You deliver the irrigant with the right needle, and you activate it, you shake it. And this is our hierarchy, probably going from what's reputed as the gold standard in a way. So the one, let's say the one that gives the most energy from the top, going all the way to the one that's the least energy into irrigant. So the IrriSafe is a nickel titanium file, so it can be size 20 or 25, 2% taper, so very small. Nickel titanium file attached to a piezo ultrasonic, and it vibrates at very high frequency, 25,000 hertz. So it's an ultrasonic, so that's an ultrasonic movement. It creates cavitations, although there's debate about that. So the main thing, it creates a lot of movement, acoustic streaming. So a lot of movement, hitting the walls, hitting the isthmuses, cleaning as much as possible. Then you have the eddy, which is your favorite, purely because of the name.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a little plastic tip again, and I quite like using plastic tips because you're not going to do any damage to the canal wall. And although it does vibrate, the other thing that you do get when you move it up and down, because it's got a conical shape to it, is you get that kind of hydraulic action of moving the fluid up and down, which, if we look at the bottom of the screen, that's what gutter percocones do as well. They create that sort of piston effect and moving of the fluid. And then back in the middle here, the Endo Ultra, Endo Activator, both of them are cordless devices.
Yeah.
The endo activator, again, a little plastic tip, which is like, we have hummingbirds here in the UK, which are for cleaning incidentally. Very similar to that, and then you've got the Endo Ultra, which is a titanium.
It's a titanium tip, yeah, titanium tip, and it's an ultrasonic frequency, cordless, so it has rechargeable batteries. Again, another way. So it really is dependent on what you like and what amount of money you want to spend. But ultimately, the gutta-percha cone, the pumping up and down of the irrigant, creates that fluid dynamic that you want, and there is enough evidence out there to show us that actually, as long as you agitate the irrigant in there, you get a better cleaning effect and result. So
I'm going to ask you one last question before we wrap up here. What do you use day to day on your small taper shapes? And can you, if you're using something that activated, with these small shapes, is it going to dampen? Is it going to work? Is it going to be useful?
Yeah, so, and I think what you're alluding to is if I use an Irrisafe, okay, because I feel that it's the one that gives the most energy to the fluid. But with small shapes, the nickel titanium file will be dampened. So as soon as a file, whatever system you use, touches the sides, it stops that movement. So my thought process is the more energy I put in, the more likely I can create some movement. With a small shape, the Irrisafe allows me to get very, very low down because it's small. Yeah. So it just transports some of the fluid there. Ultimately, you can achieve the same with a gutta-percha cone. With a well-fitting small GP, the small taper ones, the ones, for example, the true anatomy ones, it will get you to length and create that. Because what do you use for the small shapes?
Small shapes, again, it'll be Eddie for me, or GP cone pumping. Genuinely, I mean, it's for me, it's about just the sort of piston effect movement that happens there. And just to kind of summarise, really, you're better off doing something than nothing. I mean, there'll be others that disagree with that, but I think that a bit of movement, bit of replenishment, because as soon as irrigant touches, density is buffered and activated. So the more you stir it up, the more it's working. Keep it simple, and certainly we'll start to see.
Does it work?
Who knows?
Does it work?
Who knows?
Do things heal? Do small preps heal?
Small preps heal, and I feel that could be a good topic for our next podcast.
I think so. Well, always a pleasure, John. Thank you very much for talking irrigation.
All right. Cheers, everyone. Bye for now.